Have you ever heard of a man who meticulously planned his crimes years in advance, with no apparent motive or connection to his victims? A man named Israel Keyes. In the annals of criminal history, there are names that stand out, names that send chills down the spine. Yet one name often escapes the lips of even the most devoted true crime enthusiasts. That name is Israel Keyes, a man as enigmatic as he was terrifying. To understand the enigma of Israel Keyes, one must first delve into the paradox that was his life. On the surface, Keyes was an unassuming man, a construction worker who lived a seemingly ordinary life. Yet, beneath this facade, lurked a chilling secret. Keyes was a serial killer, a burglar, an arsonist, and a bank robber. His crimes spanned over a decade, reaching across vast landscapes, from the chilly realms of Alaska to the sun-scorched plains of Texas. What set Keyes apart from other criminals was not just the breadth of his crimes, but his unique modus operandi. He meticulously planned his crimes years in advance. He buried kill kits across the country, containing everything he needed to commit his heinous acts. He selected his victims at random, with no discernible pattern or connection. His crimes were not driven by personal vendettas or twisted passions. They were simply a part of his dark, inscrutable game. Keyes was a master of deception, a chameleon who blended into the background, a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was the embodiment of the proverbial stranger danger, a man who could be your neighbor, your co-worker, or the stranger you pass on the street, and you would be none the wiser. Unraveling the enigma of Israel Keyes begins with understanding his early life. It is there in the formative years that we start to see the first signs of the monster he would become. But that's a story for another time as we continue to delve into the life and crimes of Israel Keyes. Born in Utah, 1978, Israel Keyes grew up in a large, unconventional family. His childhood was far from the norm. Raised in a Mormon household that later transitioned to a fundamentalist Christian sect, his early years were spent living off the grid. The Keyes family resided in a one-room cabin in the woods, without electricity or running water. It was a harsh, isolated upbringing, one where the siblings were homeschooled and the family's interaction with the outside world was minimal. This unconventional upbringing may have played a part in Keyes' development into a man who would later become a notorious serial killer. His introduction to crime came early. As a teenager, he broke into homes and stole firearms, a thrill that would eventually evolve into a more sinister obsession. In 1998, at the age of 20, Keyes enlisted in the US Army. His time in the military was unremarkable, but it was here that he honed skills that would later aid him in his heinous acts. He became an expert in survival techniques, camouflage, and hand-to-hand combat. His fellow soldiers remember him as someone who kept to himself, an introvert who seemed to enjoy the solitude. After leaving the military, Keyes worked a variety of jobs, from construction to managing a Native American tribal store. But beneath the facade of normalcy, something darker was brewing. He started studying other serial killers, learning from their mistakes and refining his own methodology. He developed an obsession with Ted Bundy, a man he admired for his ability to blend into society while committing horrific acts of violence. In these formative years, Keyes' life appeared normal to the casual observer, but beneath the surface, a different narrative was unfolding. His childhood isolation, early introduction to crime, and military training were combining into a lethal cocktail. His fascination with other serial killers was growing, and he was learning how to avoid their mistakes. From these experiences, a dangerous predator was slowly taking shape. Keyes meticulously planned his crimes with a cold-blooded efficiency that terrifies even seasoned crime investigators. His strategy was alarmingly systematic, a chilling blend of patience and precision. He would bury what he called kill kits, caches of money, weapons, and tools for disposing of bodies, in various locations across the United States, sometimes years in advance of the crimes he would commit. This wasn't a man who rushed into his heinous acts. No, he would wait, sometimes for years, ensuring the trail between him and his future victims was as cold as the graves he would leave behind. He'd return to unearth these kits when he was ready, when the time was right, when the victim was chosen. And speaking of his victims, there was nothing predictable about his selection process. He didn't have a type, age, gender, location. None of these factors mattered to him. This randomness was a purposeful part of his strategy. making it even harder for law enforcement to connect the dots between his crimes. He'd travel thousands of miles, rent cars, switch vehicles, all in an effort to throw off any potential scent. He'd fly into one airport, rent a car, drive hundreds of miles, then commit his crimes. He'd then dispose of the car in a different location entirely, making sure to remove any trace of his presence. He was a ghost, a phantom who struck without warning and then disappeared without a trace. He was careful, oh so careful, to avoid detection. He'd use cash to avoid leaving a digital footprint. He'd turn off his mobile phone to prevent GPS tracking. He'd meticulously clean his crime scenes. He was a master of evasion, a true predator in every sense of the word. His method was chilling, but what's even more disturbing are his actual crimes. But we'll delve into that horror in the next segment. Brace yourselves, because the tale of Israel Keyes only gets darker from here. Israel Keyes' reign of terror spanned across multiple states and several years. This was a man whose thirst for violence and chaos knew no bounds. Keyes, with his twisted mind and unquenchable desire for control, roamed freely, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. Among his many known crimes, the murder of Samantha Koenig stands out in its sheer brutality and coldness. Samantha was an 18-year-old barista working in a coffee kiosk in Anchorage, Alaska. On the evening of February 1st, 2012, Keyes saw her working alone and chose her as his next victim. The details of that night are chilling. Keyes approached the kiosk wearing a ski mask and brandishing a gun. He forced Samantha to turn off the lights and hand over the day's earnings, but his lust for power wasn't satisfied with just robbery. He forced Samantha to leave with him, taking her to a shed at his own house. The terror that poor girl must have felt is unimaginable. For 2 agonizing weeks, Samantha was held captive. Keyes, with a coldness that sends shivers down the spine, even sent ransom notes to her family, demanding money for her safe return. But the truth was far more horrifying. Samantha had already met her tragic end, her life cruelly snuffed out by this remorseless predator. Keyes didn't stop there. He took a photograph of Samantha's lifeless body, manipulating it to appear as if she was still alive. He then used this photo to extract a ransom from her distraught family. The level of callousness and manipulation involved in this act is a terrifying insight into the mind of Israel Keyes. But Samantha wasn't his only victim. Keyes confessed to a series of burglaries, arsons, and bank robberies. He admitted to burying kill kits, caches of weapons, cash, and tools for body disposal, across the country, ready for his next murderous spree. His crimes were meticulously planned, his victims chosen at random, making him an unpredictable and frightening force. Yet despite his meticulous planning and the randomness of his victims, Keyes was not infallible. He made mistakes, and it was one such mistake that led to his downfall. He used Samantha's debit card, which he had kept as a trophy, to withdraw money from ATMs across several states. This left a digital footprint that investigators could follow, leading them straight to Keyes. And so the reign of terror of Israel Keyes, a man who killed for the sheer pleasure of it, was brought to an end. His crimes, horrific and numerous, have left an indelible mark on the annals of American criminal history. His capture, however, offered little solace to the families of his victims, who were left to grapple with the loss and devastation he had caused. But like all criminals, he made mistakes, and it was one such mistake that led to his downfall. In March 2012, Keyes was arrested in Texas, thousands of miles away from his last known crime scene. The long arm of the law had finally caught up with him. Unbeknownst to him, the authorities had been meticulously piecing together the jigsaw puzzle of his heinous acts. Keyes was apprehended in Lufkin, Texas. A routine traffic stop turned out to be the beginning of the end for him. The arresting officer noticed discrepancies in Keyes' identification and vehicle plates. The subsequent search of his vehicle unearthed damning evidence. Inside his car, authorities discovered items that sent chills down their spines. A ski mask, a rope, a roll of duct tape, and a police scanner. These were not the possessions of an ordinary man, they were the tools of a predator. But it was the stolen bank card that truly tied him to his last known crime. The card belonged to Samantha Koenig, a young woman from Anchorage, Alaska, who had recently been reported missing. The FBI traced the use of the card across several states, leading them directly to Keyes. His arrest marked the turning of a page. The hunter had become the hunted. Once in custody, Keyes began to unravel, He confessed to the murder of Samantha Koenig and, shockingly, to others as well. He spoke of his crimes with a chilling detachment, as if he were recounting the plot of a particularly gruesome film. His confession was a gruesome tapestry of terror, woven with tales of meticulously planned murders, kidnappings, and robberies. Keyes admitted to burying kill kits across the United States, each containing the tools he would later use to commit his horrific crimes. He revealed that he chose his victims randomly, an admission that sent a shiver down the spine of the American public. Despite his chilling confessions, Keyes remained an enigma. He defied many of the established profiles of serial killers. He had no specific victim type, no particular method, and no discernible motive other than the thrill of the kill. But his confessions were cut short. In December 2012, before he could be brought to trial, Keyes died by suicide in his prison cell. The full extent of his crimes may never be known. The secrets he took to his grave continue to haunt investigators. Israel Keyes was a unique figure in the annals of crime, a man who defied many of the established profiles of serial killers. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, in the most unexpected of places. Even after his death, the shadow of Israel Keyes looms large. His reign of terror was not confined to his life. The aftermath, a chilling legacy of unresolved mysteries, continues to haunt investigators. They persist in their efforts to uncover the full extent of his malevolent spree, sifting through cryptic clues and cold cases, hoping to bring closure to the families of potential victims still unaccounted for. The impact of Keyes' crimes reverberates beyond the lives he tragically cut short. It has left an indelible mark on the victims' families and the general public alike, a chilling reminder of the evil that can reside in the most unsuspecting of individuals. It has stirred a collective sense of unease, a constant questioning of who might be living next door. Israel Keyes, a name that sends chills down the spine, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of ordinary life.